take our seats, please? Hello? Oh, yeah. Can everyone please have a seat? Do you have your agenda? All right, we're going to now report back. And we have had a number of topics, so whoever is going to be the scribe for each group can be the person who enlightens us on what you all came to a conclusion about during our breakout sessions. So who would like to start? All right, yes. Yeah, come on down. Come on. Would you rather?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Gary Hegwer. I'm from group number 8. We have probably the best group in the whole crowd here. I think so, right? Group 8. I was elected by the Foster City's mayor to be up here, so that's how I got up here. Some of you may have done the Rochambeau for the speaker, but I was appointed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we did is our group, we had a lot of good discussion. We utilized the bullet points as kind of our format to generate our thoughts and our interest in this topic. What our group kind of came up with was approaching this from a reverse standpoint. So instead of starting at the top with planning and progressing the vulnerability and then funding, we approached it from the funding component first. So we looked at what funding mechanisms are out there so that we can begin our planning phase, begin our planning committee. And a lot of the conversation was just really about how do we get this started? What are the initial steps to address the issue? We looked at, as far as part of the funding component, looking at things that are currently in place versus trying to impose special taxes. So see if there's some monies out there. We did hear at the beginning of the presentation that there's $250 million out there within the state that can be utilized for planning, so maybe we could tap into that. As far as the vulnerability, amongst our group, we had most of our folks are on the bay side versus the coastal side. So we talked about vulnerabilities to your specific community. What we thought would be a best way for us to approach this is to do some tabletops and some scenarios to kind of get an idea of exactly what the vulnerabilities are. So that was our starting point. Once we concluded those tabletops or those scenarios, then we could address how a 3-foot rise of sea level, what it would mean to our communities. So we wanted to kind of get our funding first, look at how that would affect our various communities, and then see how the 3-foot level would affect the overall plan. We did also talk about having some type of a JPA or a focus group to look at not only your own community, but all the communities that are along the bay side and also the coastal range. Because if we just get one city to put control measures in place, if your neighboring cities aren't in alignment with that, then they could be counterproductive. So there you have it from Group 8.
Any questions of Group 8? All right, will you?
Thank goodness.
All right, how about Group 7?
Group 7, I was elected to be the scribe. I'm Syed Machuza, Public Works Director for City of Burlingame. We had people from the coast, from the North County, as well as from the South County. So the first question was planning for the 3 feet of sea level rise and whether that would make sense, and how would our community respond. And we had a lot of discussion, and one of the many of the folks felt that 3 feet is not really the start point, and we should actually go for the higher, not start with the 3 foot. But then there were folks that talked about, but 3 foot starting higher may require a lot of funding, a lot of difficulties in actually starting such a, taking a high mark. Rather than that, we should start at a foundation. If we start with a strong foundation that we can build for 5 foot, but then built in increments, and then the first target of that increment would be 3 foot would be acceptable, as long as there is a foundation built to increase that in increments. And then we also looked at the planning, what would be the planning paradigm, and what additional information that may be available or should be used to assess the concept. There are a lot of studies done in the Bay Area already by Santa Clara County, as well as some studies in Alameda County, and trying to take examples from those studies and be able to use it for San Mateo County as whatever that is transferable, and then do actual assessment in terms of where levees are appropriate, where seawalls are appropriate, where marshlands are appropriate, and then quantify that and come up with a cost and then do an education to the community and have a strong public outreach. Because until and unless the public is part of the solution and they know what it means, where their buildings are submerged in the water, what hotels are submerged in the water, or a barge station, for example, that would be hugely impacted. So I think having that community understanding and having maps available where people see maps online and through a campaign, community outreach efforts, that would be helpful, because community then could be in the driver's seat and then take this thing, because it's difficult without the community. So you need the entire community in each of the agencies being part of the solution. So, and then also zoning laws need to be incorporated, updated in the context of the sea level rise, and also with regards to vulnerability studies. Again, looking at when the studies are available, then in terms of the studies are not general studies where the water levels will come to, but rather in terms of how they specifically impact the properties. That would be helpful in educating the people, and then people can decide how much are they willing to pay for, or what other funding sources would be available to be able to develop funding mechanisms. So again, we didn't have a lot of time. The group was very involved in the conversation, and we couldn't get to the other questions.
All right. Good. Thank you very much, sir. As we're speaking, think about in your communities, do you see hosting a study session for the residents in your district? I think they can hear me. Can you hear me all right?
For the video.
Oh, for the video. Whether or not hosting a study session in your cities would be a first step, a second step, where that would be, and how we can be helpful in terms of getting the experts to come and present would be something that might be worth thinking about. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi there. Yes, thank you. In our group, we had Pacifica, Millbrae, Brisbane, Half Moon Bay, Foster City, and Redwood City. So a nice, diverse geographic group. Of course, there was, how are we going to get all the cities to really, the councils and the citizens to really own and address sea level rise? From a planning standpoint, it was generally agreed by all the cities that they have a number of assets, from wastewater treatment plants to even groundwater, that are at risk and really need to be considered. Get my tablet here to work properly. Vulnerability assessment would be very, very helpful. Foster City, of course, is extremely concerned. There was general agreement by all the cities, same as the previous group, that 3 feet is probably a good place to start with, but we need a foundation for higher. In terms of vulnerability, An assessment is very important. The topics that came up, of course, were wastewater treatment plants, businesses, jobs, housing, transportation, and what is the impact upstream? What is the impact on water surface and flood control? A suggestion that we may want to use the process that adapting to rising tides used as a guide. Need to make sure citizens understand the risks applied to them, even if they live up in the hills, that it affects everybody. Let's see, in terms of the local option, the last question, we were reminded again that if you have a program and you deliver people, it develops trust. There was a discussion about CCAG and whether or not, as an existing system, that this sea level rise process could be grafted onto CCAG. Could there be advantages in terms of protecting properties from an insurance standpoint? So you're not just looking at the risk of cost of insurance for existing properties in sea level rise, but actually advantages for protecting them. And I think that was basically it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Kim. Number 5.
Hi, I'm Anna Roche with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. I'm the climate manager for the wastewater enterprise. My group had BCDC, the mayor of City of Burlingame, and a city council member of Menlo Park. And as you can tell from that lineup, financing in the political landscape was a major overarching concern. So the first item, planning for 3 feet of sea level rise. There was an initial discussion of whether we're all even on that same page, and some people thought, oh, everybody in the Bay Area is dealing with 3 feet, and I think we realized after we discussed it for a while that we aren't. Would 3 feet...
Meaning, are some thinking less or more?
I think there's, for example, in San Francisco, we don't have an accepted and agreed upon number, and so we're working on that, but we're not on the same page. So that's where we're starting from. So the question in terms of number 1 is whether we're talking about retreat or protection, and we thought that those numbers could be different. If it was retreat and you had somebody, a private developer wanting to plan a big development, you could potentially lose that tax base if that person or that entity was not wanting to deal with 3 feet of protection. In terms of the vulnerability assessment, I think folks felt like we all know that we're vulnerable, so we'd like to move into the solution planning and look at adaptation strategies and move beyond just looking at vulnerability. One idea was for the counties to take a lead role in incentivizing cities to opt in to that kind of planning effort. In terms of the last one, there was political concern that starting a taxing authority would not go over well with individual citizens of those individual areas, and so we'd like to start with a working group to start with and work towards those solutions. And obviously everybody recognizing that our protection is only as good as the weakest link, so if you really want to incentivize everybody to get involved. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Number 4.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Shawn Christensen. I am a council member from the town of Hillsborough, and bear with me because I only found out at the end of our discussion that I was going to be our presenter. So in looking back at our group, we had a nice cross-section of electeds and non-electeds. folks who are dealing with this in the trenches and folks who are dealing with it from a more political perspective, and of course, therefore, also in the trenches. We also looked at it sort of in a, as I look back on our discussion, as a case study, and to some degree, because two of the members of our group explained very specific problems and approaches that they had in their situations. And one is we were talking with Rick from the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and he explained to us the bond approach that they'd used, the way that they had sort of developed a campaign to obtain the necessary funding for the seawall work, the levee work that they've been doing, which we heard about earlier today, and that was very instructive. And one of the things that he explained to us in the course of that was that they had used a 2 feet sea level rise as their standard. So of course that got us discussing, well, what was that based on? And we learned that the Army Corps of Engineers had been involved in that NOAA had been involved in that, and recognizing that that was based on at least, what one would assume to be, and we believe to be, a very, thorough and interested scientific and engineering-based process. We saw that 2 feet had been used in one instance. So that led us to discuss, well, so if 2 feet was appropriate there, when we were asked if we were to adopt 3 feet, why is 3 feet right? I mean, why is 3 feet the right number? And clearly in our earlier discussions, we talked that maybe that's not adequate and maybe 4 is adequate. So I think it would be fair to say, coming from our group, that there wasn't consensus on the notion of 3 feet, although there's clearly recognition that there's need for planning. And another topic that we discussed at some length was the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side and the issues that they're dealing with respect to the slope of their plant, and that they have their electrical panels, essentially the electrical mind for their plant is currently located at a very low level in the plant. And so, like, if they're going to make adaptations to it, they have, if I'm remembering correctly, they have essentially a constituency of 25,000 people, and they have funding needs for significantly more than that. So where do you get the money? And so one of the things that we discussed as a group was the need for a cohesive story. We had folks from Brisbane and San Bruno and Hillsborough, and so obviously different communities are going to be very differently impacted based on whether they're on the Bayside, coast side. We had Pacifica, Bayside, coast side, or in the middle, and therefore not able to see how they are directly impacted by it. And so we discussed the need for a cohesive story, and that, if we were to look at this as a county or even as 2 counties, because, water displaces, it will find a way. If Santa Clara and their authority or their water district is proactive and San Mateo isn't, that's not good for San Mateo. So, I mean, we looked at it from that perspective, that we need a cohesive story, that we need political will, that we need to find funding sources, and I think it demonstrated that getting to kind of a one solution that's going to fit all of us isn't going to be easy, but it's going to be an interesting process. So.
Thanks. You did very well, considering you were appointed at the last minute. Number 3.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Terrence Joe, Assistant Public Works Director from City of Redwood City. Our group has a lot of forward-thinking leadership and a great, bright engineers. So we arrived at a solution rather quickly. What we are going to do? Yes, believe it or not. So what we are going to do is, like, we're going to build a huge dam outside the Golden Gate Bridge, and we're going to call that dam as the Congresswoman Jackie Spear Dam. How's that? The only thing that we haven't figured out is how are we going to be release treated wastewater that we dump it into the bay. So that's our next step. Just joking aside, yes. Yes, we all agree on that the sea level rise is coming, and we know that we need to address this. And we also agree that this is not going to be a agency issue or the county issue. It's kind of like a regional-wide issue. This entire bay that we all need to be work on it and address it. And then some sort of like JPA, like a BCDC type of organization with the guidance from the federal level that everyone participate in. Majority of issue we thought about is a like philosophical issue, soft issue, how the citizen can buy in. You know, most of the people think it's not my backyard issue, and they may not care about that. So that even though we come up with all these data, some people will pick on a small piece of data and throw it away. So we need to work on it mostly in philosophical issue rather than how do we build a dam is the next step. So this is our group finding. So.
All right, thank you, Terrence.
Thank you.
Thanks for your humor, too. You know, it's come up in a couple of the groups, and one of the takeaways that we are going to get back to you on is what the Corps of Engineers believes, recommends, plans for based on what kind of rise they anticipate. So, and that will no doubt change, but we're going to find out for you and get back to you on that. All right, we now go to number 2. Peter?
Yes, I'm Peter Grinnell with the San Mateo County Harbor District. We operate 2 harbors, one on the bay side and one on the ocean side, and so we're intimately connected with the water that's going to affect both shorelines of this county. In any case, moving on, our group identified several concerns, and number 1 is the sense that the county needs to move quickly to identify and organize or assist in the organization of some kind of a working group or other body to actually get started on a whole program of action to bring this whole concern forward. And one of the major elements of that is education. You've heard other groups refer to this. And that relates to a whole range of things. You're talking about the 20 counties and the 23 special districts in the county, talking about all of the citizens, residents, taxpayers, voters, who live in different localities, and some of whom may say, well, how would this affect me? I don't live on the water. And we discussed a great many of the concerns, such as watershed issues that affect folks that aren't on the bay, transportation arteries, such as the trains and the highways, which are used by their residents or others going to and from homes and work. And if those things are out of commission because of impacts of sea level rise, they are affected. So it's clear to our group that everyone is involved and affected. And the education effort is key. And so we discussed a bit about how that could happen through outreach to city councils, working with CCAG, other organizations. Another key element for us was the need to zero in on vulnerability assessments of different localities depending upon certain kinds of conditions and how that can be done. Again, it's already been mentioned, Corps of Engineers, but there are a lot of agencies that have been working on this. BCDC, again, Coastal Commission, Ocean Protection Council, Coastal Conservancy, and others, other federal agencies, and how to obtain information from them, how to work with them, organize with them. And this brought us to the question and the recognition that this is a regional concern. For example, if you take the idea of finance and you want to apply for state money, well, basically the San Francisco Bay Area is, going to be looked at in terms of competition for funds, if nothing else. Again, if the state wants to apply for federal money, same idea. And so it's vital to get that unification and how that communication process happens. I'm going to finish up now and just refer to brief discussion we had identifying other interests. For example, industry, business. As you know, the Bay Planning Coalition just had a sea level rise meeting. And again, connecting with business is going to be vital, especially when you think of Silicon Valley and the biotech complex. So that's basically what we did. I will just close by taking the prerogative of the presenter to suggest that this whole effort might benefit from some kind of a symbol, an image, a logo. If you think of that immortal poster, Uncle Sam Needs You, something like this as part of your education effort might be really important, along with souvenir snorkels.
Thank you, Peter. All right, number one.
Okay. It's not often that number one brings up the rear, but I'm delighted we are. I'm Ann Wingert, and I'm the mayor of Portola Valley, and I would just say that I think it's very clear we probably had the biggest group of the groups, just given what I saw in the room and in other places. But we had, and I think this is very notable because it's representative of the challenge we have in front of us, an incredible disparate group of geographic locations, as well as, I think, sort of different affiliations. Obviously, a number of us were elected officials, but we came from Foster City, Granada, Santa Clara Water District, San Francisco Airport, San Francisco Creek, two or three sanitary districts, Woodside, Portola Valley, San Bruno, Colma, and South San Francisco. That gives you an idea. And we had a consultant, and we even had an artist, who I think will come into play when we get into the communication side of this. But we, I think, tackled it slightly differently. We took the three topical areas, but what was very clear amongst this group, given all of our different backgrounds, different locations, that the number one messaging, or a couple of very, very critical messaging, had to do with our approach. And clearly, as all of you said, it's a regional approach. We have to attack it both at the San Mateo County level, because we have separate challenges within this county vis-a-vis our water district situations and some of our other issues. And in that regional approach, what we are trying not to do is to disadvantage our neighbors, since we're all in this together. A lot of discussion of those types of things. And I think one of the things we talked about as well is developing a consistent policy. And this gets to the 3-foot issue. What are we planning for, and what's the timing? That is key to this whole issue. And as we started into that discussion specifically, depending on the experiences of our group, and in particular, I heard it for those that were involved either in the water districts or the flood planning districts, that they're already in the middle of arguing or having different of opinion relative to what that level should be. And part of that then goes to our third point, which was the regulatory agencies. Big point of discussion, because they are in many cases driving those numbers and what they'll approve and ultimately what can get funded. So that the need for that series of metrics that we would define, I think in a working group that is probably coming from hopefully this group today, is going to be critical, because that'll drive what we're able to do and what the regulatory agencies hopefully will buy into as well. Army Corps of Engineers, as Jackie said, was much in our discussion point, BCDC, State Fish and Wildlife, and various water boards. So the whole concept of the interconnections and the coordinated approach was a very large one that sort of permeated our group. And finally, I would just say that one of the things that we did talk about is that we know this area is viewed worldwide as holding a leadership role for what's going to happen in this issue, not only here, but obviously in other places, and the fact that we need to be sensitive to that and really step up to the plate. Even if it seems as though we may not be a coastal or a bayside community, it's a problem, it's an issue, it's a challenge for all of us. So that's group one.
All right, thank you, Ann. Oh, group 9, I'm sorry, I don't know how to count either. All right, group 9.
We started with 8. We'll save the best for last. Group 9. So our group had a wide variation of jurisdictions as well. I'm Sean Rebay. I'm the city manager for Colma. So we had Colma, obviously, Foster City, Pacifica, the airport, San Bruno, Daly City, Portola Valley, and South City. And so, Colma, Daly City, Portola Valley are obviously going to have different issues than the airport, Foster City, and Pacifica. Some of us will have direct impacts where they're underwater, and others will have kind of ancillary impacts from a creek backing up or wastewater treatment plant or something along those lines. We looked at the planning for 3 feet, and we thought that that was easier for us and the community to get our arms around. But we also realized that 3 feet's likely not enough, and that whatever we do needs to be designed in a way that you can build on it. So there's a flexibility for capacity and expansion as well. We talked about one of the things needing to look at was what other jurisdictions are doing and how we can all partner across the borders, because water doesn't stop at a county line or a city line or a jurisdictional line, it flows through, and making sure that we're building organizational capacity and looking at ways to either use an existing organization or actually create a new organization that will kind of bring all the information that we need to get brought together in one spot. Because we're all geographically different, each individual entity needs to have a seat on that overarching organization as well. We looked at, we need much more information in a digestible format for the public, especially. Somebody talked about building a cohesive story as one of the important things. I think that's really important as well. We also felt that each entity should be doing its own vulnerability assessment and kind of feeding that into whatever the larger organization ends up being. And looking at whether that's a JPA or a special district would probably be one of the important things. We thought it was critical to establish some sort of flood control and financing district, because that would allow the entity would be able to bond and be able to go for grants. It would be able to do potential parcel tax or something to fund the ongoing operation. And then having that larger group instead of each individual entity trying to do something on its own gives us a little bit more clout at the state and federal level. And then we look, as I said, talking about looking at possible parcel tax or some sort of similar funding mechanism for the organization. So that was Group 9.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so a couple things come to mind. I think Dave's going to come up and we're going to talk about these planning entities, working groups, but I think based on what we heard from Rich Gordon, the fact that there is $250 million sitting in an account right now in the state that has to be spent, if it's going to be spent this fiscal year, would really, I think, spur us to want to put together a number of grants. So I think one of our working groups should be the talent we have in, excuse me, in our cities and in the county with grant writing to get together a group that would immediately start to develop some ideas for grants. Now, just standing here thinking about it, I could see us writing a grant on the assets at risk throughout the county, that we could have a study that would ask for a grant to study what the likelihood was of 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet in this region that would be different, or asking for money to develop an education program that we could each use in the cities and the county. So I think that should be one of the areas that we elicit some support for and hopefully some volunteers for as we move forward. And then another thought that came to mind, Dave, within the county council's office in the county, having the county council just independently for us give us the pros and cons of a JPA, a district, incorporation in an existing entity. There is a San Mateo County flood district, so we should look at all of those various potential entities as well and the pros and cons of each. Any other thoughts on on that. Yes?
Jackie, that was a great point. We currently have CCAG that works that works with all the cities. They're also working on stormwater initiatives right now, and I think it would be great to have the agency has representation from elected officials, engineering staff, as well as the planning staff, and that would be another opportunity to look at whether that organization can lead this effort.
Now, CCAG has no assessment authority, though, does it?
I don't. We have a CCAG director here.
Sandy Wong, CCAG Executive Director. We're currently working on a legislation to give us the taxing power.
Okay.
But it is for stormwater pollution control only at this point.
Okay, all right, so we should probably include CCAG as well. All right.
Great. Yeah, just a couple comments. First off, I just really want to thank everyone for coming. We have 20 cities in the county. We have representatives from 19 of the 20. And we had great representation from the special districts and from our partners in the regional agencies. So that's great, and not often that we have all of us together, and this topic requires it. First, there was a miscommunication on that state money. Unfortunately, it's $2.5 million.
I don't care, that's still good.
Yeah. But the point is really important. As Rich mentioned, there was no expectation. He thought he was going to create a fund with nothing in it, and then 2.5 landed. And
That actually makes us all feel better, because it seemed like all of a sudden it's going to save out a whole lot more money than we thought.
But what will, as the issue of climate change and sea level rise gains in urgency, this funding is going to become available. And that fund that's 2.5 will grow. And hopefully we'll see some grant opportunities. Obama is talking about money, he has to get it through Congress. But I think it shows that in the future there will be funds. So we have to be organized to go get them to do our work. And the word was used on organizational capacity. And I think that's really the key first step, is to figure out how we're going to organize ourselves so that we're positioned to seek this funding and to draw us together in an effective way. Also, I think if it's okay, Congresswoman, I think John Engler might have a comment. Did you say you had a concluding comment?
Sure. But just that I'm going to be back here in September. I seem to come out here to do briefings for different groups. The Port of San Francisco's got me coming back, and Bay Planning Coalition. If there are ideas you have, I've been doing this book tour for a year and a half, and some of you bought books. But there's a lot of education has been said to be done here. And there's no simple answer here. And while this may be the biggest problematic challenge any of us has faced as a society, it's an opportunity to think different. It's a glass half empty and half full, to use perhaps an appropriate or really worrisome pun on the case of rising sea level. But as I talk to different groups, I really can say that what's happening out here in this part of the Bay Area is as leading as any group in the world. I've probably given 100 talks in the last 2 years. And so you're to be congratulated. This is not easy stuff. This has never happened before in human civilization. We should get a pass if we're struggling on how do we do this. So it's either the toughest problem you've ever faced or the greatest challenge. Because everything from architecture to engineering to city governance to economics to how do you amortize all coastal assets when land wasn't amortized on the balance sheet before? What does it mean for personal investments? What does it mean for modeling? It's every aspect of what we do. It's where we live. It's where your economies are based. The most important line on this planet is the shoreline. We took it for granted. We didn't think it was going to move for 5,000 years. It hung in place. This is big stuff. So you're to be congratulated. If you're struggling with this, don't feel bad. And I'm sure that I'll be back here in a couple of months, and if I can help you, I've got some business cards here. I do both keynotes and workshops and help people get their arms around this, whether it be companies, communities, investor groups. So let me know if I can help. Thank you.
Thanks, John. John's become a great asset for us. He's been working closely with Congressman Spear's office and my office and Assemblyman Gordon's office. He's here all the time. I think we're going to make him an honorary San Mateo County citizen. So in terms of...
On stilts.
So let me make a comment about just some next steps and then turn over to Congressman Spear to conclude. So now it's time to get started. And this problem is big and it's going to be with us for a long time. And the hardest part really is getting started. And as we've talked about today, there are two very specific things that we believe warrant our attention. One is to get a group together with the help of County Council, which actually I've spoken with, and it would be very happy to provide that technical assistance, to think about what the organizational capacity we need and the structure we need, both to do the planning and ultimately seek local funds. So what we need is staffing is always in short supply, so we need folks in this room who are really ready to roll up their sleeves and do some hard work on it. So that's one task. And the second one is this, the notion of preparing a vulnerability assessment and including some thought on mitigation strategies and adaptation strategies, and looking at some of the models that have been pursued in other parts of the county. There's one that's received a lot of attention, and you can go up on the website, called the Adapting to Rising Tides model. So there's various ways you can go about this. And again, we get a small group together, and we can bring that to ground. So both of these things are our start, and they get us going, give us some both a structure and kind of some data to begin to move this ball forward. So we will send to everyone who's attended today a little recap memo, and along with some of the presentations and instructions for how you can sign up. And I can't emphasize how important it is that we need your help. And I think if we can get this ball rolling, I think these funds will be available. I think foundations would be interested in this. And because of the fact that we are at ground zero, and because of the fact that we are this unique county where people are willing to work together, there's no reason we can't really take a leadership role and start to attract funding, whether it be grant money or state money, and build more capacity and start to make headway. So keep an eye out for that email, and I'll turn over to Congressman Spear for some final comments.
Okay, thank you, Dave. There's also, in that email will be links to the slides. So all the slides that you saw, you'll be able to access in that email. So make sure you look for that email. This has been a really important first step. And I think we both agree that it shows great sense of responsibility on your parts for being here and for recognizing that this is a big issue that we have to grapple with. I would say that the point of accessing the money to do the preliminary stuff is where we really have to focus. And I think we can get there rather quickly. It's only $2.5 million instead of $235 million, but it's still real money, right? And the extent to which we can find money on a federal level, and going to the Googles and the Facebooks of the world to say, this is something that you have a self-interest in, as well as something that can be of great benefit to the entire regional community, is worth us looking at. So if there are those of you who are willing to be part of a grant writing effort, I think we should include that as part of the working groups as well, so that we can embark on that. And then we'll have to look at ways to try and access that money, and that will be part of our job. Okay? So again, thank you all for being here, and we look forward to, I think, a great working relationship. And this will be a model, I think, for other areas around the country, particularly in North Carolina. Thank you.
Photo or anything before we